to get it in the bag. Randy, you trying to flunk this test?
No, sir.
Once upon a time, in a land where billionaires feared nothing except bad PR, a noble CEO decided to descend from his mahogany throne, glue on a wig, and mingle with the peasants. And just like that, a TV show was born. Undercover Boss. The magical land where executives discover that minimum wage isn't a livable income and then act surprised, like they didn't personally approve it 5 board meetings ago.
I heard Joe was doing side jobs. I had a pit in my stomach for a moment there because...
Where a man worth $40 million pretends to be Dave, the new trainee, and needs 2 takes to figure out how to operate a cash register. Where a single mom with 2 jobs and no health insurance tells her story to a stranger in a fake mustache. And her reward is a $5,000 check and a hug from the man whose company has a 60% turnover rate. For a decade, we watched this circus with misty eyes and full hearts, as if systemic exploitation could be cured with a gift card and a slow piano track. But here's the twist. It wasn't empathy. It was marketing, wrapped in sentiment, dipped in corporate branding, and served with a voiceover that sounded like Morgan Freeman on LinkedIn. This wasn't a show about fixing injustice. It was a show about feeling better about it. It began in 2009, in the most British way possible. A quietly brutal TV concept disguised as empathy. Undercover Boss was created by producer Stephen Lambert and debuted on Channel 4 in the UK. The idea? Simple. Send a CEO undercover into their own company, make them do entry-level work, and pretend it's the first time they've ever seen a break room microwave.
So what does this do? This keeps me safe?
You don't want any spiders or anything.
The timing was no accident. The global economy had just imploded, trust in corporations was radioactive, and CEOs were about as popular as airline food in a hostage video. So naturally someone thought, what if we gave the billionaires wigs and told them to cry on camera? Shockingly, it worked. Viewers watched in awe as executives discovered that warehouse jobs are physically demanding, that customer service is hell, and that minimum wage doesn't cover medical bills or rent or, well, anything.
I give my parents $100 a month just for, like, food.
Wow.
It was a hit. Within a year, the format went international. And while the British version was laced with subtle class critique, the American adaptation went full Hallmark movie.
In terms of how the product should be cooked. That's why we have all those timers.
The lighting got softer, the music swelled harder, and the CEOs, they cried more. Journalists called it cathartic television. The Wall Street Journal said it was touching. Critics hailed it as a moment of healing between labor and leadership, as if a surprise bonus check could undo decades of corporate neglect. The show won Emmy Awards in 2012 and 2013. Parodies exploded online, from Saturday Night Live to Key and Peele, a sure sign that the format had achieved cultural saturation. And yet, even at its peak, the cracks were there. Some called it a PR stunt with a moral soundtrack. Others noticed that only 3 hand-picked workers ever got help, while the rest of the company remained exactly as broken as before. Time magazine wondered aloud whether anyone outside the camera frame would benefit from all these tearful boardroom revelations. But the ratings were good. The music swelled, the CEOs cried, and we, the audience, nodded along like everything was finally going to be okay. It wasn't. But for a few years, Undercover Boss was the most effective guilt laundering machine on television. At first, the flaws were easy to miss. The disguises were bad, sure, but that was part of the charm. No one expected a CEO to be a master of stealth. If anything, it was comforting to see them struggle with a wig, a fake beard, and a name tag that said Steve written in Comic Sans.
In this business, but I think 80 hours is crazy. Bloody nonsense.
It made them look human. But somewhere between the violin music and the emotional monologues, people started noticing something strange. Why do the undercover bosses always meet exactly 3 employees, each with a perfectly tragic backstory and an Oscar-worthy delivery? Why is no one ever suspicious of the camera crew filming their every move in a warehouse break room? And why are these executives consistently stunned to discover that entry-level jobs are physically and emotionally exhausting in the companies they run? The question started online. Reddit threads, YouTube comments, think pieces from the usual suspects. But the suspicion wasn't just aesthetic, it was structural.
You know, and I'm gonna do all I can here to make sure she's okay.
And then came the first signs that Undercover Boss wasn't just naive, it was dishonest. A former employee from Shopper's World, years after her tear-jerking episode aired, revealed that the dream wedding she'd been promised on camera It never happened.
And I'd like to offer you a $15,000 signing bonus right now.
No follow-up, no explanation, just a corporate ghosting with B-roll footage and a forgotten vow. Others echoed similar experiences: tuition funds that never arrived, bonuses that mysteriously evaporated, promotions that were walked back as internal miscommunications. Suddenly, the gift-giving finales felt less like charity and more like bait. Still, the show moved on. Ratings held. Most viewers didn't read follow-up articles, and CBS had perfected the format to such a degree that doubt was drowned out by swelling music and slow-motion hugs.
This is going to change my life in so many ways. I cannot believe.
Until one day, the fantasy broke so loudly and so grotesquely that it couldn't be patched back together. It started with bikinis. December 2014, Doug Guller, CEO of Bikini's Sports Bar and Grill, appeared on Undercover Boss in what can only be described as corporate reality television's equivalent of a cell phone. During what was supposed to be the heartfelt finale, the moment where most CEOs cry and hand out scholarships, Guller did something different. First, he fired a waitress.
Emotions right now. Just so you know, I know a lot of people in Austin and Dallas.
On air, her crime? She wasn't enthusiastic enough about the skimpy uniform, and she dared to say that the job was just for the money. In a shocking twist, she treated her minimum wage service job like a job. Then, in the same breath, Guller rewarded another waitress, not with a raise, not with a management position, but with a free breast augmentation because she had mentioned wanting one in passing. That was it. That was the grand gesture, the emotional climax. It was no longer feel-good television. It was a corporate fantasy slipping into softcore absurdity. The internet revolted. Hashtag Undercover Boss trended on Twitter, not with tears, but with disgust. A petition launched. Media headlines called it tone-deaf, perverse, exploitative. CBS's own promotional tweets, still stuck in the show's usual tone, made it worse. One read, "Think Grace will be the perfect bikini babe?" While the replies below were an open bonfire of outrage. And Guller, he tweeted proudly, "Thanks for watching, hashtag eat with your eyes." As if the whole thing had been an ad, which in hindsight it was. Any remaining dignity the format had was gone. And if that moment cracked the facade, what happened next set it on fire. February 2015, PV Electronics. COO Cortland Gray appeared on the show, a classic episode, or so it seemed.
Because it can make it harder to manage them.
Starting to feel it.
Yeah.
He cried, he learned, he rewarded struggling employees. One was offered $15,000 to pay off debts. Another got tuition coverage, extra vacation, even an emotional plea to stay with the company instead of taking a better paying job elsewhere. He agreed, he stayed. Big mistake. Because just 4 months later, PV shut down the entire plant. Everyone, including the loyal employees from the episode, was laid off. The woman who had cried on camera now said, "I feel like I was scammed." The man who turned down a better job? Furious. "They used us for TV." And PV's response? They blamed the edit. Cortland Gray, the same COO who had wept on air, released a blog post blaming CBS, claimed the cuts were out of his hands, said the episode was misleading, but no amount of finger-pointing could change what viewers saw. A company that had promised redemption and then delivered betrayal. The Washington Post called it a PR liability in disguise. Others simply called it proof. Proof that the show wasn't about changing lives. It was about appearing to care. By this point, even elected officials wanted in. Enter Bill Peduto, mayor of Pittsburgh, who became the first sitting politician to appear on Undercover Boss.
I am Bill Peduto, and I am the 60th mayor of the city of Pittsburgh.
He handed out $155,000 in personal checks to struggling city workers. Except, plot twist, he wasn't allowed to do that. Lawsuits followed, ethics boards got involved, questions about public funds, favoritism, precedent. Suddenly, the show wasn't just embarrassing, it was a legal headache. And that's the thing, Undercover Boss didn't just lose touch. It scheduled a feel-good segment, cried on camera, and quietly cut half the staff the next day. From that moment on, Undercover Boss could no longer be defended as naive optimism. It had become self-parody, an elaborate PR ritual in which companies pretended to be shocked by the systems they designed, and then either did nothing or made things worse.
So I'm thinking rocker.
Oh, okay.
The wigs weren't fooling anyone. The tears weren't either. The show wasn't changing the world. It was rebranding injustice. In its final years, Undercover Boss wasn't a TV show. It was a ritual. A CEO puts on a bad disguise, pretends to be shocked by the conditions they created, hears 3 perfectly packaged sob stories, sheds a tear, and hands out one-time prizes like corporate party favors. Then they leave. No follow-up, no consequences, just another 43-minute illusion. The show sold itself as social commentary, but it was really a polished PR campaign, and it used real people with real problems as set dressing. Plenty of those workers never got what they were promised. Wedding funds vanished, tuition went unpaid, promotions turned out to be fictional, and when that truth surfaced, the show shrugged or spun it away in post-production.
Was shocked. I was expecting a younger person, but everybody gets a chance.
But that wasn't a bug, that was the system. Undercover Boss wasn't designed to fix anything. It was designed to appear like it cared. It offered catharsis without change, emotion without action. And what's worse, the executives knew. They weren't shocked their workers were struggling, they were shocked they had to face it. And the show made sure they only had to do it once. There was never a follow-up, never a policy change, never a moment where a company came back and said, we fixed this for everyone. Because that wasn't the point. The point was the performance of care, the illusion of change. The real fixes, better wages, labor protections, collective dignity, were never on the table. Just enough sentiment to ease the guilt, and just enough silence to avoid accountability.
You rush through it, they could be scarred for life. Dang.
And when the ratings collapsed, no one tried to save it. Not the networks, not the CEOs, not even the viewers. Because deep down, we knew it was always fake. The only real thing was the pain of the people who believed it wasn't. For a brief moment, it really felt like it could matter. Not every episode was a lie. Some workers did get their lives changed permanently. Some companies did implement new policies. And for many viewers, Undercover Boss was the first time they'd ever seen a CEO cry on behalf of someone below the VP level. It cracked open a window. The format wasn't always profound, but it did something unusual. It pulled executive power into public view. For once, CEOs weren't behind podiums or in earnings calls. They were in hairnets and break rooms. It showed that boardroom decisions have human consequences, that the people keeping businesses alive are often the least protected, and that empathy, however staged, has currency in public life. That matters, even if it didn't last.
It's amazing. For once, the big mouth has no words.
And maybe that's the show's greatest irony. In trying to look human, Undercover Boss occasionally became human. Despite its design, despite its flaws, it left traces. Workers shared their stories. Viewers saw things they weren't meant to. For a few years, it became harder for corporations to pretend they didn't know. That's not nothing. But let's not confuse exposure with accountability, or performance with progress, because at the end of the day, most of what the show offered was a fantasy, that change can happen through one good deed, one teary speech, one symbolic gesture, that structural problems can be solved with a check and a hug, that empathy is enough. It's not.
I got you saying a bunch of things about our customers.
I did.
That are really not very nice.
And maybe that's the real legacy of Undercover Boss. It showed us what change looks like on television, and reminded us how different that is from the real thing. So here's the question. If we needed a reality show to teach us that workers deserve dignity, what does that say about our reality? Like what you heard? Hit like, smash subscribe, and tell us which CEO should stay in hiding. And remember, this video may not fix late-stage capitalism, but hey, at least we didn't wear a wig.